So I have page 814. Okay, Earl, I'm going to mute you just so that for the recording, it doesn't interfere. But if you have a question or you need something, either just unmute yourself or. No. Okay. So we started last week comparing that just like there's a, a, a seder hishtal shalut, right? What was the translation of gradation? An order of gradations, a progressive descent from the higher worlds to the lower worlds. The same thing, the Torah comes down in this order of descent. So let's maybe if you want to write it down, let's organize in our heads what we have as far as the order of descent is considered. The first thing that we have is, not the first thing, but the first thing that we know is the 10 Sefirot, right? The 10 divine attributes. And they are divided, generally speaking, into two. The first three that make up Chabad, good morning. The first three that make up Chabad are intellectual, and the 7 remaining are emotional. We call them usually Chagas because they are an acronym for Chesed, Gevura, and Tiferes. Chabad is an acronym for Chachma, Bina, and Das, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. And Chagas is kindness, severity, and beauty. Okay, so the first part of the Seder Hishtal Shalut that we want to remember is that there are 10 divine attributes, 3 intellectual, 7 emotional. However, these divine attributes are replicated hundreds of thousands of millions of billions of trillions of infinite times. But they start big. The first time they're replicated are in the 4 worlds. So the first divine attributes, the first place the divine attributes take shape are in the world of Atzilus. That's the world of emanation, the world that is one with God. In that world, these 10 attributes are not felt as independent from God, but as pure expressions. And that's why everything feels close to God. There is no feelings of separateness. But then, after the 10 Sefirot of Atzilus fill their purpose, so to speak, so the last level, Malchus, royalty, goes down and creates another world called Bria, the world of creation. This is already a creation of something, even though it's very close to the divine, but it's still a creation. It's not God. And this world also has these 10 divine attributes, obviously on a lower level. Then the world of Yetzira is created, is formed. Yetzira means to form. This world also has the 10 attributes. And then the world of Asiya, the world of action. First, there is the spiritual part of the world, and then there's the physical part of the world of Asiya, of action. That's the world we live in. This division of 4 worlds is generally speaking, okay? So I said before there are infinite worlds, but the infinite worlds that exist all exist within one of these 4 general categories. Either they are one with Hashem, or they are a creation, but still feel very connected, or they are already formed as independent entities, or they're a world of action. This translates in the amount of good and bad. Atzilus is a world that's only good. So theoretically, a person, if there would be a person that's perfect, we would say this is a person of Atzilus. If you have a perfect apple, you might say this is an apple of Atzilus, even though there's no such thing as a perfect apple, right? There's no such thing as a perfect person. The world of Asiya, actionable world, not what people do in the world, but the world itself doesn't look like a naturally good place. Right? If a child is left in the middle of nowhere with no one to fend for it, the likelihood of it surviving are pretty much zero. So the world, and if there's no law, if everyone is just left to their vices, the world is lawless, is not necessarily a good place. That's the other extreme where God is totally concealed. Okay. By the way, prayer has 4 stages that also correspond to these 4 levels. The first part of prayer is the morning blessings, and it culminates with Hodu. Hodu, we give praise to God. In other words, we're just acknowledging God. We're acknowledging that everything we have comes from God. That's the first part of prayer. That's like the world of Asiya. It's just action. There isn't necessarily intelligence or emotions involved. Then we go up a level. Psuke de Zimra, the verses of praise. The second part of davening, there we're starting to become emotional, starting to look around us and see God's handiwork and realize that there's a God around us. And this gets us excited to worship God. The third part of prayer is the Shema and the blessings surrounding the Shema. When a person meditates about the angels and then gets to say the verse, Shema Yisrael Hashem, and understands intellectually that God is the ultimate unifier and that really everything is just an expression of the divine, that's Bria. That's intellect, the world of intellect. And then you have the Amida, the fourth part of davening, when a person is standing face to face with God, talking to God directly. There is nothing. There's no feelings. There's no intellect. There's no me. There's just my feeling of oneness, of connectedness with Hashem. I once saw that there's also, you can divide this in the process of the creation of a child. That before the child is formed, first you have the sperm and the eggs that are each part of the father and mother, part of the parents. In other words, you don't see an independent entity. That's like the world of Atzilus. Then you have the world of Bria. When the fetus is created, now you have an existing separate entity, but it doesn't look like a human being, right? It's just a creation. There's matter here that doesn't belong to the father or the mother uniquely. It's new DNA. It's a new creation. That's the world of Bria. Then after a little while, the child starts to take form. You start to see the form of a future human. This is the world of Yetzirah. But as long as the baby is still inside the mother, it's still relying on the mother. It's consumed in the mother. Its life is the mother. It doesn't feel itself independent of the mother. The minute it's born, now this is the world of Asiya. This is an actionable world. This is where the baby already thinks, my parents, they're not part of this. I'm a fully developed, fully viable, independent human being. I don't need anyone else, even though obviously we as adults know that's crazy. And of course the child needs its parents, but the child may think it doesn't, just like we think we don't need a God, even though obviously we do. Okay, so this is generally speaking how the world was created in the macro. Remember, it's the same in the micro. Each individual has a soul with these 10 attributes. So there's really 8 billion or 8.5 billion sets of these 10 attributes. And then the angels, and then these 10 attributes permeate everything. Okay, now let's see how this is present in the Torah. Because remember, we're trying to get to and if you turn the page to 8:13, I'll just read this again. But what is this garment which is able to, because remember, the Shekhinah, we want the divine presence here, but it should be concealed that we shouldn't lose ourselves, right? So what is this garment which is able to conceal and clothe it, the Shekhinah? yet will not itself be completely nullified within its light. This is his blessed will and wisdom, and so forth. And so forth. Okay, we'll skip this. Which are clothed in the Torah and its mitzvot that are revealed to us and our children. For the Torah issues from wisdom, namely Chachma Ilah, supernal wisdom, that is immeasurably higher than the world of manifestation. Okay? For he is wise, but not with a knowledgeable, knowable wisdom, and so forth. So we're trying to get to the fact that the Torah also has that this divine descent, this order of descent, Seder Shalshot, that brings the divine down to this world, works through the Torah, and the Torah can be the place where the Shekhinah is found in this world. Remember, next week we're going to finish, but we're trying to discuss in these few chapters, what does it mean if God is everywhere, that he's in the temple or in the Torah? What does it mean when we say, you want to find God, go study Torah? What do you mean? God's everywhere. He's at the table just as much. But we're going to see that God encloses himself much more in the Torah. You can find much more of God himself, even though it's concealed and we don't see it. So, if last week I think I mentioned that Torah in chapter 4 in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe compares Torah to water. That just like water comes down from a higher place to a lower place, so too the Torah comes down from God's wisdom to our world. What does that mean? So it starts in Atzilus, where the Torah is one with God. In Atzilus, the Torah is God's will. There is no expression of the Torah that we would be able to understand. Right? But then, and in that world, if you read the Torah in Atzilus, it won't say in the beginning God created heaven and earth. It'll say other things that are mystical and divine. But then the Torah comes down into the world of Bria, and then Yetzirah, and then Asiya. This is how the Torah is revealed in a revealed way. This is the difference between the hidden part of the Torah and the revealed parts of the Torah. We know there are four parts of the Torah, four ways in which the Torah is processed, so to speak, in the simple literal meaning, in the drush, like the medrash, in remez, in a hidden, in a hinted form, and in sod, in a hidden form. That's Kabbalah. That's mysticism. So sod, mysticism, is the world of Atzilus. It's hidden, it's concealed. The average person can't understand it. But then the Torah comes down into Talmud, Mishnah, and the written Torah. These are the three levels of Remez, Drush, and Sod. And we'll soon see how that works and how that conforms with each world that it goes through. It also relates to the person. The person is Nefesh, is the lowest level. That's the part of his soul that animates his body. That's the Asiya, the practical side. Then there's the Ruach. The Ruach is referred to the emotions, right? The spirit. There's warmth, there's movement, there's emotions. Then there is Neshama, which corresponds to Bria, which is intellect. And then there are the higher levels of the soul, which are not independently identified, because that Atzilus, it's all one with God. It doesn't feel its own independence. Okay, so let's see. By the way, this doesn't mean, and so in the Torah, you'd have the verses of the Torah are going to be the lowest level. It doesn't mean the verses are lower than Talmud. It means they come down lower. And we'll soon see why. Mishnah is in Yetzirah, in the world of formation, and Talmud is in the world of Bria. But remember, Talmud came after Mishnah, and Mishnah came after the verses. So it says that the higher something is, the lower it can fall, or the lower it can come. So just because it's lower doesn't mean that its source is lower. It comes from a higher place, and that's why it has the ability to go lower. You talk to someone from 8th grade, and they would be repulsed by the thought of having to spend recess together with 7th grade, right? But if you speak to someone from the 12th grade, they'd love to go to preschool, and instead of studying, they'd love to spend time with little kids, right? The older you get, the more you realize you can relate to and help and be beneficial for kids younger than you, and the older you are, the younger it can get. So let's read a few lines inside and then we'll continue. So the last paragraph on page 814. Only this is because it, supernal wisdom and the Torah, has descended by means of obscuring gradations from a higher grade to a lower grade. With the descent of the worlds. In other words, the same way that the descent of the worlds are Atzilus, Bria, Yetzira, Asiya, the Torah also made a descent. Sod, the secrets of the Torah, to the Remez, to the hints, huh? No, how do you translate Remez in English? What's homiletic? Is that Remez or Drush? I think that's Drosh, no? Midrashic is like homiletic, right? Remez is like gematrias and things, more obscure but not hidden. Then there's drash, and then there's the simple meaning. It also goes through the four gradation, the four levels of obscuring gradation, until the Torah, has clothed itself in material things, namely the 613 commandments of the Torah. As this wisdom came down by progressive descent from world to world, the Shekhinah too came down and clothed itself in each world. In other words, remember, the Torah is the wisdom of God. So when the Torah comes to Bria, the wisdom of God's coming to Bria. But now it's coming already in a different form. Now there's words attached to it. There are numbers attached to it. When it comes into Yetzirah, now there are allegories attached to it. There are metaphors attached to it. And then it comes into Asiya, and now there are oxes and donkeys literally attached to the will and wisdom of God because it went through this descent. Now, this is the shrine of the Holy of Holies, which is contained in each world. What does it mean this is? So it says the Shekhinah, which is God's wisdom that comes into the next world in the form of Torah, yeah? It resides in the Holy of Holies of each world. Let's give you a little color. The Baal Shem Tov, the successor of the Baal Shem Tov, the teacher of the Rebbe of the Alter Rebbe, was the Maggid of Mezrich. Maggid of Mezrich was a world-renowned, well-known Torah scholar and Kabbalist, mystic, before he came to the Baal Shem Tov. One day he heard about the Baal Shem Tov, so he decided to go and travel to him and see what this is all about. And he was assuming he'd come to the Baal Shem Tov and he'd hear amazing Torah insights. And he's there for a few days, and all he hears is stories. The Baal Shem Tov says a lot of stories. So he decides this isn't for him, and he gets ready to leave. But before he leaves, he goes to say goodbye to the Baal Shem Tov. So the Baal Shem Tov asked him, do you know how to learn? He said, yeah. Do you know mysticism? He said, yeah. So he opened up a book of the Arizal, Eitz Chaim, and he asked him to read a certain passage. So the Maggid read the passage and explained how he understands the passage. But then the Baal Shem Tov said, you didn't understand anything. Stand up. The Maggid stood up, and the Baal Shem Tov started reading the passage. And in the passage, there were certain names of angels and certain combinations of the divine name. And the Maggid said afterwards that the whole room started changing colors. Probably not a physical thing, but he experienced it. He didn't just understand it. You can read the Torah and not know what you're saying. We could be sitting here and talking about Atzilus Bria. You can repeat these words and not have any clue what you're talking about. You may understand it intellectually, but not really. You can't really see it in front of your eyes. Okay? So let's give a little visual to what's going on over here. The first step of creation was Bria. Because before Bria, even though it was a world called Atzilus with 10 attributes, but it's one with God. You couldn't tell the difference. Obviously, God knows the difference, but the outsider couldn't tell the difference. So how did the world of Bria come into existence? So this is the way the process worked. Just like there were 10 utterances that created the world, there were 10 attributes that God created that were formed in Atzilus. And then each world has these 10 attributes, but what makes them different is that each world is dominated by a different of the attributes. So Atzilus, even though it has all 10, is dominated with Chach. Chachma is that lightning bolt, that initial idea that falls into the head that encapsulates everything, but doesn't look like anything. And that's why in Atzilus, because Chachma is dominant, you don't see anything but God. You don't even see the idea. But then the idea goes into Bina. Bina is where you start to add breadth and width to it, where you turn it into three-dimensional and you start understanding it and applying it. Here, there's already a whole idea. There's the creation of an idea. It's still within mostly the world of God, but still it's an independent idea that's starting to have its own matter. In Bria, there is Chachma. In Atzilus, there is Bina. But in Atzilus, Chachma is dominant. In Bria, Bina is dominant. And that's why Bina is dominated with intellect. Now, the 10 attributes of Bria, let's, just for visualization's sake, this is not literal, so please don't, you don't have to make a diagram. It's not like this. But if we were to imagine it in a physical way, let's say the world of Bria is this room, yeah? So the top level, the highest level of the room is going to be where the 10 divine attributes are. And then the rest of the room is the world, and where everything in the world of Bria happens based on these 10 attributes. What do we know is in the world of Bria? We know there are angels in the world. That's the first level, first world where there are angels. We know that there are souls, Jewish souls in Bria. The higher level of Gan Eden, of paradise, is in Bria. There are a lot of things happening in Bria, but it's all under the auspices. It's all under the influence of the 10 attributes, which are dominated not by number 1, Chachma, they're dominated by number 2, Bina. And that's why everything in this world is dominated with intellect. The angels of this world are thinking and thinking. They can't find God, so they say, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. It's all a result of intellectual exercise. Then you get to the world of Yetzirah. Yetzirah here, the dominant force is going to be emotions. But again, there is this highest level of the world. We're going to call that, or the Alter Rebbe here calls that, the shrine of the Holy of Holies. What's in that shrine? The remnants of the previous world that came into this world to create a new world. And it's the 10 attributes. The 10 attributes that result from the previous world and now create a new world. There's a lot of things happening in the world, but those things are a result of the 10 attributes that are in the shrine, so to speak, in the antechamber, in the Holy of Holies of the world. Everything else is affected by it. And the same thing is in the world of Yetzirah. Yeah? And the same thing is going to be in the world of Asiyah. Intellect, Bria, emotions, Yetzirah, and then action is Asiyah. Then we have the Torah. Yeah? The Talmud is in Bria. Why? Because in the Talmud, the purpose of the Talmud isn't to reach a conclusion, even though there are conclusions in the Talmud. The purpose of the Talmud is to understand the conclusions, how we got to those conclusions. It's all intellect. And that's why Talmud is in Bria. The halacha, the law itself, as we'll see soon, is in Yetzirah. But Talmud is in Bria. Let's look inside. We're going to read a little bit here, and then a few pages we'll go through. If something in the text you don't understand, stop me. Otherwise, when we'll finish the idea, then we'll capture and summarize. In the middle of 815. So remember, we're talking about the Torah that descends to every world, is present primarily in the shrine of Holies in every world, in the 10 attributes. And that's how it can reach our world, while not looking divine, really is holy divine. Okay. So also has it been stated in the Zohar and Eitz Chaim that the Shekhinah, which is Malchus of Atzilus, that's the last of the 10 attributes, royalty of Atzilus, being the manifestation of the light and vitality of the Blessed Ein Sof, which illumine the worlds. Therefore, in other words, since it's revelation, since it is a revelation, Malchus is that level that then comes down to rest and create Bria. Since it is a revelation, it is called God's speech and the breath of his mouth, as it were. For the purpose of speech is to reveal that which was concealed in thought. Yeah, we discussed this many times in Tanya. As in the case of a person, by way of example, speech reveals to the hearers the speaker's concealed and hidden thought. When do you speak? When there's someone else you want to speak to. If there's no one else there, you don't speak. Some people that process things externally speak to themselves. That's how they process. Yeah, but if they were able to somehow project their thoughts externally, yeah, that would be just okay. In other words, if they wrote it down, it would be the same thing, even though writing is compared to speech as well. Okay, so speech is revelation. Now, God's speech, which is Malchus, the last level of each world, is the level that takes everything that it just accomplished, that the world just accomplished, and tries to remodel it, so to speak, so that we can produce a lower world. This level of Malchus clothes itself in the shrine of the Holy of Holies of Bria. Namely, what do we consider the shrine? The Chachma, Bina, and Das of Bria. In other words, the intellect of Bria. Through the fact that the latter Sefirot, in other words, these Sefirot, Chachma, Bina, and Das, clothe themselves in the Malchus of Bria. The souls and angels which exist in the world of Bria have been created. Yeah, so Malchus is the one attribute that doesn't have anything of its own. It receives from the earlier 9 attributes and then creates something new, something that has the DNA of the 9 attributes, is based and complies with the 9 attributes, but it's something that looks different. Just like a parent produces a child in the body, that's Malchus. Yeah, you sowed the 9th attribute is the sexual organ, but then Malchus is the result of all of these from intellect, from the brain where the sperm starts from, to the emotions where it wakes the person up, and then it goes through you. So now you have a new entity. Malchus is what produces a new entity that then can become a separate entity from the parent. So that's why. Okay, so that's what happens. And from there also, in other words, from Malchus of Bria, in which is enclosed the Shekhinah, right? The Malchus of Atzilus, which previously had clothed itself in the Chachma, Bina, and Das of the world Bria, after which the latter are clothed in Malchus of the world Bria, derives the Talmud that we possess. So remember what happened. The 9 attributes of Atzilus are enclosed with Malchus of Atzilus. Malchus of Atzilus then goes into the Chabad of Bria, and that's where it resides. But then eventually, when Malchus of Bria goes out to create Yetzirah, what does it have within it? It has within it the 9 earlier attributes of Bria. What's the source of these 9 attributes? What's residing within these 9 attributes? The Malchus of Atzilus, which came down and was shochein, rested in the 9 attributes in the Chabad of Bria. So Malchus of Atzilus goes into the Chabad of Bria. When that's fully processed by Malchus, Malchus of Bria goes into the Chabad of Yetzirah. When that's fully processed, that's going to go into the Malchus of Yetzirah, which will go into the world of Asiyah, to the Chabad of Asiyah. So ultimately, you have the Malchus of Atzilus, which contains Chabad of Atzilus. You have that in Asiyah as well. because that's how it was created. Yeah, and this is also where we derive the Talmud that we possess. That comes from Malchus of Bria, and as has previously been explained in the name of Tikkunim, that in the world of Bria, there shine and flow forth the Chachma, Bina, and Das of the Ein Sof. In other words, of Atzilus in a powerfully contracted manner, in order that the souls and the angels, which are finite beings, and they're in Bria, shall be able to receive influence from these categories of Chabad, because if they were just there in their full glory, they wouldn't be able to remain independent souls and angels. So by concealing it within the world of Bria, they're able to be affected by it. They're able to receive the Chachma of Atzilus without being nullified by it. Therefore, the Talmud, not the Mishnah, but the Gemara. So remember, Talmud can include both Mishnah and Gemara, right? The earlier stages and the later stages. When we're saying here Talmud is in Bria, we're speaking specifically to the later Talmud. The Talmud also originates from there, from the world of Bria. For it, the Talmud is also of the category of Chabad. For the Talmud is, in other words, it consists of the clearly defined reasons of the halachot. And the reasons being rational are from the category of Chabad intelligence. However, the halachas, the laws themselves found in the Mishnah, derive from the midot, the emotive attributes of the Ein Sof, namely kindness, severity, mercy, and so on, from which originate permission and prohibition. Permission deriving from kindness, right? You're allowed to do this. Prohibition from severity. Ritual validity and invalidity. Liability and blamelessness. Ritual validity and blamelessness originate from the attribute of kindness, right? You're free, you're innocent. And ritual invalidity and liability originate from the attribute of severity, as is explained in the Tikkun. Okay. Yeah.
What's Tikkunim?
It's a book. You haven't heard of a lot of books. It's a book of addendums to the Zohar, Tikkunei Zohar. It's called. I'm just trying to think without too much understanding. Are we all on the same page? Do we all are sort of following what's going on, generally speaking? Yeah. Earlier with us? Okay. That's fine. That's fine. The next step is going to be Yetzira. This is where Malchus of Bria, which remember is influenced by Chabad of Bria, which is the Shechin, a result of the Shechin of Malchus Atzilus, which has within it the Chabad of Atzilus. So now the Malchus of Bria goes out into the world and creates the world of Yetzira. And now it resides in the crown, in the mind, in the Chabad of Yetzira. And then it influences the whole world of Yetzira. And then it goes into the Malchus of Yetzira. This is primarily influenced not by intellect, like Atzilus and Bria, but by emotions. Right? Which angels are in Yetzira? We know the Ophanim and the Chayos HaKodesh. These are wild animals. They're holy animals. But this is where passion is created. This is where they're screaming. They're going back and forth. These angels, they're in a rush. They're in a hurry. They're in a fiery type of existence. And this, the souls, by the way, the souls that emanate from Bria are going to be souls that you'll see. Well, you wouldn't know necessarily, but if you would know this is a soul of Bria, you'll see that this person, his main purpose in life is going to be through intelligence, whether it's through studying Torah, teaching Torah, etc. And the person who his soul emanates from Yetzirah, he will be more of a person who devotes his life to God in an emotional capacity. Obviously, he has intellect, he has actions, but his what is it, Greek or raison d'être, French? His purpose for being is going to be emotions. That's what drives him. That's what drives his intellect, and that's what drives his actions. And this is where Mishnah comes in. Why Mishnah? Because Mishnah is the halacha, the law. What's the law? And when it comes to law, here, the emotions are important, but not for the reason you may think. Not because the Torah cares how I feel. The Torah doesn't care how you feel. If you're guilty, you're guilty. If you're innocent, you're innocent. But because emotions shape how we process our intellect. Two people can study the same case law, the same article of the Constitution, the same verse in the Torah, the same Supreme Court decision. One person is much more intellectually inclined. One person is much more emotionally inclined. Or two people are emotionally inclined, but one is more of the giving form and one is more of the withholding form. And they will read the text and come to two totally different conclusions. And they can explain it intellectually. In other words, when we're just intellectualizing, I can understand your viewpoint just as much. If I was a purely intellectual, it would be very easy for me to understand opposing viewpoints. But because I'm emotional, and because I'm dictated by certain emotions, therefore, when someone says something that doesn't conform with those emotions, I become emotionally opposed, which causes me to start thinking of rational and intellectual arguments against that. So here we have a very practical application. In the Mishnah, you've got law. But here you have Beis Shammai says this is okay, Beis Hillel says it's not okay. No reasons. That's in the Talmud. Yeah. Why do they say this? This is because Kabbalistically we know Hillel, their souls were more leaning towards chesed, towards kindness. Shammai was more towards gevura, towards discipline. However, they didn't say what they said because they were emotionally biased people. Everything that they said was direct result from Torah. But because they were different people, they had different outcomes. I want to give you an example. We're not going to use Shammai and Hillel for this example. Does anyone happen to know what the very first Mishnah and the whole Mishnah speaks about? No? Okay. So actually, this is a good way to...
Shema?
Very good. This is a good way to realize how the Mishnah is a direct descendant of the Torah, because you would never start a book of law by saying, from when are you allowed to read the evening Shema? Why would you never start a book of law with that statement? Because a book of law should start with, you have to say Shema in the evening. And now the question is, when do you have... The Mishnah doesn't say you have to say Shema. The Mishnah takes it as a given. Why? Because in the Torah it says, right? You should teach it to your children when you lie down and when you rise up. So we know there's a mitzvah to say Shema in the morning and the evening. The question then is, when do we consider it evening? And then the Talmud discusses why we discuss evening before morning. Okay. So when are you allowed to read it? Everyone agrees it's from when it gets dark. Till when are you allowed to read the Shema? 3 opinions. Rabbi Eliezer says, till the end of the first watch. We know that in the temple there were 3 watches throughout the night. In other words, the night was divided into thirds. So at the end of the first third of the night, that's when you're allowed to read Shema. So if let's say sun sets 10 o'clock and the sun rises 6 o'clock. No, sorry. Let's say the sun rises 7 o'clock. Yeah, that's 9 hours. So each third is 3 hours. So 10 o'clock the sun sets, so 1 o'clock would be the last point at which you could say the Shema, the evening Shema. The rabbis say till midnight. So that would be 2:30, right? Halfway through the night, 10 to 2:30, right? 4.5 hours into the night. That's midnight. Midnight would be half of the night. However, Raman Gamliel says until dusk, till dusk. What's
Dawn.
No, till dawn. I'm thinking dawn. That's when the sun goes down. I don't know why dawn. Till dawn. It's till it starts getting light outside. Where do these differences come from? They all start at the same time. So they all agree when night starts. So why don't they all agree when night ends? So in Kabbalah, it explains that Rabban Gamliel, who's the most lenient, he gives you the whole night. He was from the house of Hillel. He was a Hillelite. He came from the descendants of Hillel, right? Rabban Gamliel is the son of the great-great-great-grandson of Hillel. So he is leaning towards kindness. In the Zohar, it says that there are 3 attributes. One is long, chad arich, one is long, one is short, and one is intermediate. So he is the most lenient. He gives you the most time. The whole night is nighttime. You could say the Shema the whole night. Rabbi Eliezer, we know, Shamua, he was from Shammai, from the school of Shammai. Whether he was biologically from Shammai or just from the school of Shammai, we know from the Talmud that he was from the school of Shammai. He gives you the shortest time, 1/3 of the night. And then the rabbis come in the middle and sort of compromise to midnight. However, because we know the halacha is like Hillel, halachically you're allowed to say the evening Shema till dawn. Now, we go like the rabbis and we say you should try to say it before midnight, because the only reason the rabbis said to say it before midnight was that you shouldn't forget by dawn. If you push it off till dawn, especially if you don't have clocks or alarm clocks, you don't know when dawn's going to be. And if you wait till the last minute, it'll be a minute too late. Midnight, you're still in the safe. So they agreed that the halacha is like Rabban Gamliel, because the halacha is like Hillel, but preferably you should say it at midnight. So here you have where halacha comes down, and without any intelligence, so to speak, there's no intellectual argument going on over here in the Mishnah, right? It's just halacha. You have 3 opposing opinions, 3 different opinions, differing opinions. The Mishnah gives no where do the differences in halacha come from? From the emotions, from where emotively these 3 rabbis, these 3 groups of rabbis were coming from, where their souls were dominant. Okay?
Point of information, this is also said in the Haggadah when we do the Magi.
Right. Well, they came and said that if the sun hasn't gone up, you could still say the Shema. Right. So we just discussed Bria is the Talmud, Yitzira is the Mishnah, Halacha. The next step in this descent is going to be the Malchus of Yitzira is going to go down and create the world of Asiya. It's going to rest primarily in the Chabad of Asiya, right? And that's going to produce the world of the written Torah, verses. Remember, we're not saying verses are on a lower level than the Mishnah and the Talmud. On the contrary, it's higher. That's why it could come down lower. How does it manifest itself that it's coming down lower? There's a halacha. If you read the Talmud or the Mishnah and you don't understand what you're saying, you haven't studied Torah. But if you read verses of the Torah and you don't understand what you're saying, you still study Torah. That's why someone gets an aliyah, even if they don't understand what's being read, you make a bracha. This is the best manifestation or the best example of the world of action. Just saying the words, you don't even understand what you're saying. There's no better action, no purer action than just saying words you don't understand. And this is still encapsulates the divine. The divine is still present in these words that to the person reading them may be meaningless. And yet, he's still an independent person. He's reading words he doesn't understand. So you've God himself who's enclosed in these words, because remember, it all starts from Chabad, Chachma, Vatzilus. Through the order of descent, ends up in Malchus of Asiya, which produces words of Torah, do not steal, thou shalt not steal. And in those words is present Chachma Vatzilus, the divine will and wisdom, in these words. And what might the person be thinking about when he's reading these words? First of all, he may not even know what he's reading, but even if he's reading, he may be thinking about the guy that stole $100 from him, or his desire to steal and him deciding not to. He's talking about stealing. A bad act. In that thought process is enclosed the Shekhinah, God himself. It's all in that thought, in those words. Okay, let's read a little more here. The 29th of Iyar, 818, the last paragraph. By virtue of the clothing of Malchus of Atzilus and Malchus of Bria, it then clothes itself in the shrine of the Holy of Holies of Yetzirah. This being the Chabad of Yetzirah, the Chachma Bina and Das of Yetzirah. It is in this manner that the Shekhinah of Malchus of Atzilus ultimately comes to reside in the world of Yetzirah, primarily in Chabad. When later on, the latter Malchus of Atzilus, together with the Sphirot in which it is enclosed, in Malchus of Bria and in Chabad of Yetzirah, are clothed in Malchus of Yetzirah, the souls which are called Ruchot are created, right? That's the Ruach, that's the level of soul called Ruach that's present in the world of Yetzirah. And the angels, which are of the world of Yetzirah, also are a result of Malchus of Yetzirah. And from there too, in other words, from Malchus of Yetzirah comes the Mishnah that we possess, which comprises the legal decisions that are likewise derived from Chabad of the Blessed Ein Sof. Again, they emanate from there, but how do they express themselves? Permitted, not permitted. No intelligence present at the moment. Only that the categories of Chabad, that is the reasons and interpretations of the halachot, are clothed and hidden within the laws themselves, and are not in a revealed form. While the elements of the halachot which are in a revealed form in the Mishnah are the very reflection of the midot of the Blessed Ein Sof in the revealed form. Thus, page 821, thus, it has been explained above in the name of the Tikkunim that 6 Sefirot nest in Yetzirah. Remember, all 10 are there, but what's dominant? The 6 emotional. They, the 6 Sefirot or midot, comprise in general 2 extensions, right and left. Right represents kindness and left severity. Acting with forbearance, deriving from the aspect of kindness, which results in adjudicating leniently, that is to say, to permit a thing to ascend to God, or acting in a stringent manner, and so on, declaring the object to be forbidden for use, and thereby precluding its elevation to holiness. This is an act of severity. These 2 traits, kindness and severity, represent the 2 general directions of the emotive attributes as they exist above, from which the halachot of the Mishnah derive. And all this, both the Mishnah and the Talmud, is according to the supernal Chachma, Vatzilus, and Bina and Das are comprised in it. In other words, in Chachma. In other words, it's all according to the intellect of God. But it's expressing itself in words, in emotions, in halachas, in Yetzirah. And since they all stem from the wisdom of God, of Chachma Vatzilus, therefore, and they, the Mishnah and Talmud, and the illumination of Chabad and Midot found in them, are united with the Blessed Ein Sof. For in all of them are clothed Chabad of Atzilus, with which the light of the Blessed Ein Sof is united in perfect union. In like manner, in other words, in the same manner that the Shekhinah first clothed itself in the level of Malchus of Yetzirah, the Shekhinah then descended and clothed itself in the shrine of the Holy of Holies of Asiyah. And there we get to the verses. It's important to remember that there's a very big difference in what's happening here from God's perspective and from our perspective. From our perspective is the Chachma of Atzilus that is found in the Malchus of Asiyah. Is it the same? Well, it definitely doesn't look the same. But from God's perspective, nothing changed in the Chachma of Atzilus just because it came down a few worlds. It has more garments attached to it, more clothing, more distractions, more concealments, but in the essence, it's still the same Chachma of Atzilus. So there's zero difference between God's wisdom that's revealed in Atzilus, in the world of Kabbalah, in words that we can't understand, and the way God's wisdom is present in the words of Torah that we read and don't understand what we're saying.
make a comment. I'm trying to visualize this and knowing the shape of the Sephirot as depicted in pages. Is it more like a funnel where at the top, the wider opening, you have all of the Chokhmah being a dot, and then filtering down, and then the funnel at the bottom is Malchut, which flows into the next funnel or world of and is that a correct depiction?
Generally speaking, that's correct. That's why usually in most diagrams you have three columns, right, left, and middle, and it's each three is going to be like a segel, right? It's going to be two, and then combined a little under it will be the third one. And that's true. Here he said that generally speaking, the six emotions are divided into two because all the middle emotions, all the middle attributes are really a combination of the two. So even though something else is happening in the third emotion, but really the third emotion is a combination of right and left. So it's modifying the extreme right or the extreme left, but still you have right and left. You have two sides. The question is, how far are you going? So theoretically, you can have trillions of different levels because from extreme right to extreme left, you can have millions of possibilities. But generally speaking, everything is either bent towards forgiveness, giving, or withholding, judgment. Yeah, Tiferes is a blend of both, but it's still a blend of two, right and left. So here, for the sake of our conversation, we're focusing on two. Usually, the diagrams will be three because, generally, in a more individualistic way, there's right, left, and there's center, which is a new way of operation that wasn't present in the right or the left when you do them both together, or a combination. Okay, let's finish the chapter. We just have a little bit left. Again, like I said, these chapters are very mystical. If there's questions or things you want to discuss before go to the next chapter during the week, I've time to respond by phone call, text, or whatever. But let's at least finish the chapter inside so we know where we're holding. And each of these three worlds, Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya, is subdivided into myriads of gradations, which are also called particular worlds. And Malchus of Atzilus, the level of Shekhinah, is clothed in A, the level of Malchus of each particular world. B, moreover, through the above-mentioned enclothing, it descends and encloses itself in the shrine of Holy of Holies, namely the Chabad, which is in the new world below it in rank. So the Shekhinah, which is ultimately the Chachma of Atzilus, is present in every level that comes and is created, no matter how many. It is from the Shekhinah, which is clothed in the shrine of the Holy of Holies of each and every general or particular world. And by the way, each and every person. Because remember, we also have the 10 attributes. We also have Chabad and Malchus. So we also have the Shekhinah present in our shrine of Holy of Holies, in our Chabad. So the it's included in every general or particular world. That light and vitality are extended and diffused to that whole world, and the creatures contained therein, the souls, angels, and so forth. For they were all created by the 10 divine utterances of creation, these being God's speech, which is termed the Shekhinah. So the same Shekhinah that created the human being is present within his intellect. And so when this person decides to do something, to do a mitzvah, the Shekhinah is present there and is actually being revealed because he's sort of bringing out into the open what was really dug deep down inside of his soul, inside of himself. And that's why, as we mentioned at the beginning of this conversation a few months ago, the Shekhinah is referred to by one of the terms that's used for the divine presence is the words of Hashem, right? The Hashem's speech. And that also is Malchus, because Malchus is what goes into the next world. And that's Shekhinah, because that's what rests in the next world. All of these terms refer to the way God descends from world to world while retaining the same divine will and wisdom. Next week, we'll see how this culminates into the Torah and into the Holy of Holies in the physical temple, in the physical mountain, in the physical Jerusalem. Again, even though God is in this coffee cup, just as present, so to speak, Just like he's in my fingernails, just as he's in my brain, he's also present in this coffee cup, like in Jerusalem. And yet, there's a difference. A difference in the level that it's, in the way that it's descended, in the gradations, in the way it's perceived. Okay. Have a wonderful week. God willing, next week we'll finish, and we'll have to figure out some sort of we'll have to have a committee, a celebratory committee. I don't know exactly what we'll do or how we'll do it. If you have any ideas, let me know. Let me remember my bookmark went. I had a bookmark, right?
I know.
Oh, it's on my phone.